Welcome to Vision to Venture. I'm Eddie, and I'm here to uncover the realities of scaling and building a tech startup. Each week, I speak to leaders within the tech space with their insights and advice on how to found, fund, and frame a tech startup. So make sure to follow and subscribe to never miss an episode. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Vision to Venture. Today, we are joined by Ousama Esbel, the tech and machine learning lead at Compredict, a cutting-edge AI company revolutionizing the automotive industry. With a background in software engineering and a deep specialization in distributed systems and AI, he's not only contributed to 2 patents in machine learning, but also plays a key role in shaping the future of smart software-defined cars. Hello, Osama. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me on Vision to Venture. Um, So to kick things off, you've had an incredible journey from studying in Malaysia to becoming a tech lead at Compredict. What were the key moments or turning points that shaped your path into machine learning and AI?
All right. So, as you said, I studied and finished my bachelor in computer science back in Malaysia. And during my last year in study, I had the opportunity to work as a full stack engineer for a startup. I stayed there for around 3 years working with them. And I was given high responsibility right from the start. And during my spell there, I realized that how important, difficult it is to build reliable and scalable systems. So I decided to continue learning, and I joined the Technical University of Darmstadt, specialized in distributed software systems. And during my studies, I was exposed to several topics, which is one of them is machine learning. Knew about machine learning, about data mining, and so on. I remember I was working on 2 different software projects in data mining, and I was like fascinated on what one can learn from raw data.
Mhm.
So at the end of my studies, I decided to do my master thesis in machine learning, and I got the opportunity to do it in the automotive sector as a cross project between Compredict and TU Darmstadt. And after that, I started my journey as a machine learning engineer.
Nice. But so you started as a full stack engineer before moving into machine learning and AI. Um, how did your early experiences as a software engineer help you in your transition to machine learning?
So full stack development often involves complex problem solving, which one required to break down large problems into smaller ones. And machine learning and AI is not that different. It's just huge, complex pipelines. So having the capability to look into the big picture, zoom in to solve a specific step in the pipeline, zoom out to look at how things are connected is very valuable. And as well, it goes without saying, I mean, researching machine learning and serving it to bring value to the customer goes hand in hand. And of course, it requires an understanding of what machine learning is, and basically as well the skills from the full stack development to push these models and serve them to the clients.
And so, obviously, you've been at Compredict for a while now, but as somebody that joined Compredict when it was just getting off the ground, what was it like for you to be part of a scaling startup at that time?
Yeah, and it's been one hell of a ride, to be honest. I was I,
A
so
good
I
one,
joined.
though.
Yeah, I joined Compredict as the fifth member,
Uh-huh.
including the 2 founders.
Yeah.
So and I was the first machine learning and IT engineer at the time.
Okay.
And during the first years, there was always this constant evolution in every aspect, like team-wise, product, the diverse project that we are attracting from clients, even
Mhm.
during investment rounds is what we need to prepare and so on. So employees may need to juggle multiple tasks at the same time. Um, since we are always the underdog, so we need always to say yes and adapt to the problem, and we need to prioritize different things based on what impacts the company's growth.
Mhm.
So it's beautifully challenging, you learn a lot in the process, not just in your specialty, in every domain, like even from the business side, from networking and so on. So it's a really great journey so far.
Yeah. Um, and hopefully it will continue to be just like that, an incredibly great journey.
Yeah.
You're working on building end-to-end machine learning models for dynamic systems like cars, um, aiming to train, ship, and monitor the models with no engineering effort. What are the key requirements to make that happen?
Yes, so that's correct. I'm merely working on high frequency time series data generated from dynamic systems like cars, trains. Usually any system that contains components communicate with each other, like mechanical, electrical components. And the idea is to help engineers that have no to limited machine learning knowledge to provide insights and values to these dynamic systems based on the communication that happens there. So basically, the user has to collect this data from the dynamic system for a duration of time and send it to our pipelines to train to train on a specific target. Eventually, the pipeline um, will spit out a trained model that will either be served in the cloud, exposed by an API, or can be installed as an executable that can be run in an edge device in this dynamic system as a component. And we are doing this in an automated way. So we don't have any intervene from any machine learning engineer at any step to make this happen. And this actually raises a lot of questions, like for example, giving all these features from the data generated from this dynamic system, how do you know what features correlated to the target, for example, that's been chosen by the client? Um, how do you enhance the data as well? What model to choose, how to optimize the model. And even if you serve the model, how do you make sure that the model is still relevant, as does not decay, especially that dynamic system, they don't age well.
Mhm.
Um, Even simple questions like, given all this data from the client, how do you split the data into training, testing, and validation without having a machine learning engineer looking at this data? So all these questions, to answer them, we actually have to explore several domains from machine learning. So for example, we deploy causal inferencing models to infer what features are causing the target that's been chosen by the client. As well, we encode the time series into an embedding that respects temporal dependencies, since it's a time series. And we cluster these embeddings into some events. And from these events, we can actually do a lot of useful things. For example, we can say, we can split the data in a stratified way in training, testing, and validation. We can see what event has the least frequency so that we can enhance it with the generative model so that we can have more data for this event. And of course, then we can do something like neural search architecture so that we can find the best model for the target. And when we serve the model, we as well we monitor the drift of how the model has been performing, and we trigger some continual learning strategies, because if the component didn't age well and one of the components start giving drift in data, so we need to retrain this model, but in a way that we don't forget the past.
Mhm.
And so we are like establishing some continual learning strategies. And I think we have an impact on some of these domains, and we were able to publish many work in different areas.
And so while working on this journey, you were also able to publish two patents. And they have been obviously been approved in Europe and US. Can you explain more about the idea behind your first patent?
Yes, so along with the founders and I, we were able to publish two patents. They have been recently approved. One is an extension of what I explained right now about this end-to-end models. But instead of trying to, but we are trying to solve like a different case where the client doesn't know what target the data can actually be trained on. So they know that they have a lot of data, they collect a lot of data, but they don't know the value of this data.
Hmm.
So this patent is about, instead of finding causality of features toward a certain target, we can actually build a causality graph saying what components are causing another component using causal inferencing model like a graph neural network or Grasner causality neural networks. So once we have this graph of causality between the components, we start to trim it down. So we try to make it into a directed acyclic graph in a systematic way. So and once we trim it to the minimum amount of edges, we can then identify what are the components that causing other components, what components can be replaced, what values we can bring with the other remaining features, and so on. This has obviously some advantages to the client. So for example, it tells what hidden gems in the data, what can they do with the data, what they can earn.
Okay.
And as well, it helps manufacturer to reduce the hardware cost by replacing these hardware sensors with a virtual software-based sensor. And this as well mitigate the problem that we are facing right now with the shortage of microchips in the world.
And so, as someone who has helped scale a company from early stages, what advice would you give to to like other startup founders and tech leaders that are looking to build strong technical teams in AI and machine learning?
It's tough for startups to compete with big companies for top talent. They can't match their salaries or the fancy perks. So what can a startup do is, first of all, they need to have a clear mission and values of what they are trying to achieve at the end, an aspiring challenge. I believe that the technology that's been used by a company plays a big role. So you don't
Mhm.
want to use an outdated framework and technologies. At the same time, you want to use a technology that is recently been, and there is no like a community behind it.
Mhm.
So I think these things attract top talents. As well, the company need to foster a strong culture that people want to be part of. And there should be clear on how employee can grow and advance in the career in the startup. So they know, okay, what are the next step for them in the process while the startup is scaling. But right now, I see it less than a problem because startups right now have the opportunity to do remote work and they have access to this pool of a global talent. Yeah. So I think this is an advantage right now for startups to go into this direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially where there's obviously so much like new emerging tech to use and a lot of like, oh, personally, I've seen a lot of startups sort of start obviously taking on board a lot of that new recent tech, and a lot of companies are like now starting to implement things like generative AI and diffusion and large language models and like graph neural networks and all those sort of different things that is like becoming a bit more of like an appealing quality to candidates that are looking for that type of role and that type of company, which is great. Um, so
Yeah.
you've supervised and published several research papers. What motivates you to stay engaged in the academic side of AI, and how does it influence your work at Compredict?
Personally, I think we didn't scratch the surface of what can we do with AI.
Fair enough.
And
Yeah.
publishing work is like a way to give back to the community and help each other progress in this. And honestly, the the huge community behind AI right now is the reason why it's a fast-paced domain right now. It's like
Mm.
everyone is trying to have a print on how the AI should advance. As for work, I believe that research and development is key for companies, especially for startup, to stay ahead of the competitions, because big companies usually they have the personnel, they have the money, they have the resources to do what a startup can do. But often big companies they don't value research and development as much because it takes time to move from a research to the market due to business bureaucracy and how things escalate within a big company. So it's clear advantage for startups to invest in research and development and move fast in the market so that they can actually, provide better models, better performance, and so on, and better products eventually to the clients.
And as someone who has contributed to patents in machine learning, what advice do you have specifically for like aspiring innovators that are looking to make their mark in AI? How can they go from idea to a patent-worthy innovation?
So I think they should really think big. They
Hmm.
don't need to follow the herd. I mean, AI is a really wonderful tool that its potential has not been explored in many areas in our life. So I believe they need to stay curious, think out of the box, invest in the idea, and basically see where, I mean, there are many aspects where we don't know, we haven't really applied AI to. So um, yeah, just think out of the box, and who knows, you might transform the way that we live in, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly, and you never know because there could be so many people out there that have all these different ideas, but they just don't have they might just might not be brave enough to sort of just drop everything and work on that idea that could, like you said, be a life-changing thing, life-changing innovation. So it's just got you just it's just about taking that risk, isn't it? And having faith
Yeah.
in it and just putting your all into it. Um and what do you think are the most sort of critical skills that today's tech leaders need to develop in order to thrive in the rapidly evolving AI landscape?
So, beside ambition and the skill, because I don't think someone can get to the lead level without these two,
Hmm.
um, I think that a tech lead should be flexible, open-minded, and be organized in a way that he has always the time to keep up to date and learn new things, especially in this fast-paced domain that we are in, this AI landscape. Yeah.
Okay, and so just finally to wrap up this podcast, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring tech leaders and innovators in AI.
I always say that don't give up quickly. Always invest in the idea what we are doing. Try to explore, have a big community around you. So always be connected with good leaders around you so that they can help you push. Listen to the others. Be open-minded. And again, think out of the box. Don't just follow the herd. Don't just do the same thing that people are doing. And I see this unfortunately a lot lately. I mean,
Mhm.
recently I visited virtually a conference, so a well-known conference in AI, and you see that 90% of the work people are just trying to focus on small margin of increasement of performance for LLM, which is, I mean, it's a great tool. It's very inspiring. I mean, I use it daily, but maybe it's not just the only way that we are using machine learning for. So just think out of the box, think about other ways. There are tons of improvement that we can do in AI. Yeah, invest in the idea, I would say. I think eventually then learn from other domains as well, because many things that we do in one domain, like computer vision, is actually applicable in other domains, like in healthcare or something. So always be learning from others, try to adapt it to your problem, learn, invest in the idea, and so on. This is something that I wish I learned earlier, and I
Mhm.
actually advanced maybe fast in my career.
It's a great, yeah, very great piece of advice. And I feel like it not only goes for AI, but that could go for any sort of career, any kind of industry is just going for it and just taking that leap. But yeah, no, amazing. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Osama. It's been an absolute pleasure and a very interesting chat talking to you. And I and Enigma wish you all the very best in your future endeavors and everything that you do.
Thank you, Eddie, for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Vision to Venture. If you're listening, make sure to give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, like and subscribe to listen to more inspiring stories from leaders in the tech space.